India is not just the world's largest democracy, we're the world's largest hypocrisy.
What are the biggest challenges you faced in some of these committees?
They're one of the hidden secrets of how Parliament functions.
Does it happen only party level voting, or do people actually cross that?
So when you were a member of the Rajya Sabha, did you get a budget? Did you have a team?
You have proposed changes to the election funding mechanism, right?
Unless we figure out electoral funding, we are in deep trouble as a democracy.
On electoral bonds, which was supposed to be like a step up on transparency,
You're going to force us to go and ask for funds from people who have an agenda, who will corrupt us. And by the way, one of our IIMB alumni is also in jail on the same issue. One of my
Oh, who is he?
Let it be.
So it gives me great pleasure to introduce Professor Rajeev Gowda to our viewers today. And he has held a very interesting career, different from most of us. He was very good academically, and I've not heard of any tenured professor in the US leaving his job to come back to India to do social service. I think he's the only guy I know, because tenureship in the US means that you can literally do anything you want for the rest of your life. So he left a tenured professor's job in the US to come to India to focus on social services. And he's done a lot in the last 24 years that he's been in India. He came to India in 2000. And from then on, he's been a member of Rajya Sabha for 6 years. And he has held positions in the Rajiv Gandhi National Institute of Youth Development. He's held positions in the Central Board of Reserve Bank of India, the General Insurance Corporation of India, and most importantly, he has served for 6 years in Rajya Sabha. And currently, he is running for the position of a member of Parliament from Bangalore. And in the IIM community, I've spoken to a lot of other professors about Professor Rajeev Gowda, and everybody tells me that this guy has his heart and mind at the right place. He wants to do the right thing for our country, and it's so good to see that, right? Like somebody who is a postdoctoral fellow from Berkeley, and for a few percentage of our viewers who don't know, like being a postdoctoral fellow from Berkeley is a big achievement. Berkeley, for our Indian viewers, Berkeley is just like IIM Ahmedabad. So getting someone with his kind of background who could probably be working either as a tenured professor in the US, where he could just have a life where he doesn't even have to do anything. That's what tenureship gives you. And or working in a big corporation, earning millions of dollars, to now go back to India and want to work in politics. Hats off, because a lot of us, like including me, I've considered and I've said, oh my God, that looks too difficult, that looks too dirty, and I don't want to be in it. So it takes something inside you to say that, look, even though I'm a successful academic, even though I have academic bent of mind, I'll still get into the quagmire and want to work through the quagmire, because the biggest political change you bring through being in a political position, because you have the most power there, but it's also a quagmire. So, Professor, let's start with this fundamental question. Most of us who have done well academically in our country, we shy away from getting into the quagmire. I understand that both your father and your uncle spent their life in social services, so that gave you some road to walk on. But what is it that gives you the strength to say that, look, I'm going to get into the quagmire and I'm going to try to do the best I can while I'm in it?
Thanks, Vikas. But the first point is to not think of it as a quagmire, to think of it as, as an idealistic opportunity to make a difference to people around you, to society, to India. And of course, it is actually a quagmire, but the basic point is that should not deter one. So let me just start from the beginning. So just like you mentioned, my father and uncle are also people who've been in public service throughout their lives. So the inspiration to be in politics comes from having grown up in an environment where I heard stories about my late uncle and my late father's involvement in the freedom movement. They were involved in the freedom struggle in the last years of this freedom struggle. My uncle, M.V. Krishnappa, was a hero of the Quit India movement when during his student days in Maharaja's College, Mysore. And my father was, courted imprisonment at that time. My father also was jailed at the age of 15 in 1947. And so I actually grew up listening to stories of what they went through and why they did what they did, etc. And then, post independence, my uncle was elected to the Lok Sabha 6 times. He was a junior minister in Nehru's ministry. He founded the dairy cooperative movement in Karnataka, Bangalore Dairy. You see a statue of his. So, what Korean is to Gujarat, my uncle is to Karnataka. And in the process, it's not just about founding something, it's about creating livelihoods for, crores of people, actually. My father was Speaker of the Assembly, and I've seen him also, leading a very dedicated life aimed at improving, the quality of life for people around him, his constituency, etc. So, so growing up, just like if someone grew up in a business family and said what they also want to grow up and grow the business or something like that, in a parallel manner, I've grown up wanting to make a difference to India. And so, right from a young age, I have been, focused on this career agenda. And I actually would not recommend this to other people because it ultimately becomes like a long-term obsession, and it's not easy, to actually pull it off. But that's a separate matter. Let me just come back to the story. So, so I studied, science in my pre-university and things like that. Many of my classmates, close friends, went to IITs and beyond. But I, at an early age, decided that I want to study economics and politics and public policy, and with the intention of entering politics and following what my father and uncle did in my own way by contributing expertise to government. Okay, so actually, before the postdoctoral fellowship at Berkeley, I did a PhD in public policy and management at the Wharton, and I have a master's in economics from Fordham. But interestingly enough, I got a bachelor's in history, economics, and political science from St. Joseph's College, Bangalore, at a time when doing anything like a BA was, looked down
Yeah,
upon,
yeah,
and everyone would do only engineering or medicine. So I
yep.
had my merit seats, but I chose to go down this path, and I'm a happy man as a result of that. Anyway, so this whole desire to go and focus on a political career and the willingness to give up a tenured position all has to do with the fact that it was all part of a longer term plan. And I'm grateful to God and everyone else that I actually managed to achieve some of this, by becoming an MP, at the age of 50. And now I'm in the Rajya Sabha. And now I'm hoping to break into the Lok Sabha at the young age of 60.
No, 60 is a young age. I think we don't know this, but do you know what's the average age of our Lok Sabha?
Lok Sabha would not be that old. It would probably be 45, 50, I would think.
Oh, 45, 50.
Because
Okay.
there are a lot of younger people also
Yes.
compared to.
Yeah. So how?
I,
So
I think, Professor, you've got like a very young leader in the Congress party. Is that not right? Who's the youth leader of the Congress party?
He's actually in his 50s too. He's, I think, 52 or something
55,
like that.
55. I heard.
55, is he? Okay, okay.
Yeah, that's what I heard. I can check. I grew up in India, and I know that there was a stigma against choosing a bachelor of political science, like choosing a BA, like that would indicate that this person wasn't smart to get into science. But then obviously you having went to Wharton and to Berkeley, nobody can doubt your IQ. So from a very young age, like right after class 12th, when you have to choose between science and bachelor's in political science and economics, you made your intention very clear that look, I want to spend my life in social services. When you chose political science and economics, so that's very impressive. And I think having your father go to jail at the age of 15 that leaves indelible marks on a son's mind. I think so. Thank you for being so open about your driving force. So we understand your driving force. We understand you came back to India in the year 2000. That was 25 years ago when you were only 35 years old. That's again a very young age to make such big decisions, to live a much developed country, to come back to India. How has been your experience over the last 25 years been? Is it? I'm sure it's a mixed bag, and I'm sure it's not fair to you to ask you in a 30-minute or in an hour to explain what your experience has been. But what are the key points? What are the key highlights?
Actually, see, first, because I came back voluntarily and I came back after earning tenure, I came back as a happy, satisfied man. I spent nearly 16 and a half years in the US. I had a wonderful time there. Developed this love for research and academia there. And basically what the tenure process does is it sort of makes productivity an essential part of your being, so you can't keep quiet. You gotta keep doing something all the time and trying to make an impact. Anyway, so I came back happily. And when I came back to IIM Bangalore, which is a very nice environment, as you would all know, with a lot of freedom and flexibility. I came back to Bengaluru, that was changing in wonderful ways. There were entrepreneurship was flowering, but even more important, something called social entrepreneurship, right? Basically, a lot of people who have been successful in different domains were giving back to society. And, people like Nandan Nilekani, created, in those days, the Bangalore Agenda Task Force to improve the city. But later on, have gone on to create digital public goods, such as Aadhaar and, the UPI payment system and things like that. So these are all wonderfully inspiring people to be around. And so the spirit of Bengaluru that I came back to was one of, let's go make it. And that has stood by me and has given me a lot of strength. However, the world of politics, which I chose to enter right from the beginning, has been much more complicated. The word quagmire doesn't come close to expressing how complicated and treacherous it is. But, as a result, it's also, I've done quite a bit of writing on electoral reform and things like that, because electoral funding reform, because what happens is politics has become very expensive.
Yeah.
And so for someone like me who is a professional, politics requires a full-time commitment. You need to have a separate income. You need to be able to raise resources to contest elections, etc. And so with each election, the expense levels get worse. Okay, not the official expense level, but the unofficial actual expense level. And so those of us who are old-fashioned idealists get marginalized. Luckily for me, I had the resilience to be able to take every blow, every setback, okay, in my stride. But also, I was able to add value to my political party, the Congress, by bringing in this intellectual dimension, right?
Yeah.
So I have been a national spokesperson for many years, and I head the research department of the Congress Party, which is the internal think tank, which has three responsibilities: supporting our MPs with inputs, producing research-based attack documents on the performance of the government, in this case, the BJP government. And then, of course, in the previous election, I was the convener of the Manifesto Committee, charged with helping to generate ideas for the future. So all this came about after not the spokesperson part, but the other parts came about after I was selected to the Rajya Sabha. I had been trying to get into the Lok Sabha and contest from 2004, and I'd been passed over multiple times. It's been only the first time when I was denied it. I felt very bad about it for a long time. Probably I was even depressed. I don't know. But over time, you sort of learn to overcome that, and you gain strength and every setback just becomes something that you shrug off and focus on the future. Now, there are real prices to pay for this, okay? If I had broken in 2004, the UPA was running the country. My close mentor and friend, Dr. Manmohan Singh, was Prime Minister for 10 years. I only got into Parliament when the Congress moved to the opposition. And my 6 years in the Rajya Sabha was spent entirely in the opposition. I didn't get a chance to be part of government and to make a difference at scale, right? Which is the original motivation. Anyway, that doesn't matter. The journey continues, and with every election, we hope that that change will happen, that I will win my Lok Sabha seat, Bangalore North, and that the India Alliance will win the nation. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. We have about 4 weeks left to figure that out, and then we'll see. But otherwise, the commitment to making a difference is there. And most recently, in the last 9 months, I was vice chairman of the Planning Commission, where I've had the opportunity to, as a cabinet rank minister equivalent, to help, shape a policy in interesting ways. However, because this election came up, I resigned the job for Office of Profit. So I don't know what will happen and whether I will I have a chance to be part of a government, where really one can do good things on a scale.
So,
I want
Professor
to share.
Gowda, just one very quick question on this while we are on the topic, and we'll pause after this. Is since you're talking about this election, and we'll know in 3-4 weeks, my understanding, sitting here in London, very far away from India, is that Congress will probably be under 50 seats or 60 seats maximum. The NDA will be, if not the 400 par, will be 300, 350 in that range. And then everything else falls in between. So are you saying that on the ground it's different that you see right now? Bear in mind that most likely that this video will be published on YouTube probably after the election results.
Well, I can't clearly hear what you're saying, but if I can get a sense, I heard some crucial numbers. Well, don't be surprised the BJP does not get a single party majority. If even the NDA comes below a majority, this is India. The Indian voter has amazing wisdom, and historically, any party that seems to be becoming, sort of over powerful, there's a genius in the Indian ecosystem that brings about some correction. If not, we'll sit in the opposition. I mean, I have no issues on that front. But yeah, I think if you'll be surprised by the wisdom of the Indian voter.
I know politics is hard because I tried to be the member of the board of my condo association in Palo Alto, which is like, it's like an office condo association. And I stood for the elections. I became a member of the board. And there are like 50 people, 50 condo owners, and we wanted to put an elevator in the building because there was no elevator in the building. It's a 2-floor, low rise office building in Palo Alto. And I realized how difficult it is to get 50 millionaires to collaborate on putting an elevator in the building. All of them are well educated. It's obvious we should put an elevator. And the amount of money doesn't matter to these people. But we still haven't been able to put an elevator in that building in the last 10 years. Because there's so many egos involved, there's so many personalities. So that taught me
Indian
how difficult politics
is. Also
is.
like that. Lots of egos involved, lots of ideologies involved, but and lots of competitors all over the place. It's not like everyone's wishing you well, even in your own party. So that's the nature of the beast, and you have to live and work with that. And bide your time, keep making a difference, earning respect, and building alliances. Various things. You just have to keep at it. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. When it doesn't work, you need to have the strength of will and the resilience to be able to cope. Yeah, it's not nobody is giving us anything on a platter. I'm just pointing out that in business, there's scope for multiple people to coexist in the market. And there's a Hertz, there's an Avis. I mean, just to give you a US example in the auto rental market. But in politics, in any constituency, there's only one person. Either I am elected to the Lok Sabha from Bangalore or I'm not, right? 0-1. And cumulatively, something else happens nationally. But and if you miss out on a ticket like I did multiple times, each time there's a 5-year gap before you can, try to break in again. So it's a very complicated world. But the nice part for me was being at IIM, the ability to teach courses that, I mean, you guys, I didn't get to teach you, but later on, I initially taught a course called Political Economy, and then I used to teach a course called Business Government, which was a very contemporary course. It was full of great ideas from, impactful people, and it was very current. It really was a way of, sort of a canvas where we could get our class to engage with the world and the changes that are happening. And it really kept me highly motivated. I was also chair of the Center for Public Policy. So IIM was a wonderful platform. And one more thing, if I had not succeeded in politics, I always had that satisfaction that at least I was, a tenured professor at IIM Bangalore. So I wasn't a total failure, if you were to look at it that way. So
So,
that's what it
Professor
is.
Gowda,
But,
so,
because
there
you
is the
already,
ground level politics there. There is the Lok Sabha election and so on. Can you hear me all right?
yeah, yeah.
And on the other side are all these policy posts that you have been part of. In the middle is something called the Rajya Sabha, which is the intellectuals that are part of the Indian politics, who bring a bit of a gravitas, not just total ground level vote seeking behavior, but some intellectual gravitas. I
Yeah.
understand you've been like in that segment, you've been like the biggest, one of the biggest people in there, and you've been part of some of these. So, what are the biggest challenges you faced in some of these committees, if you can share with us? Because, um, like like I said, I mean, all we know about politics, for most of us, I can talk, and most of our viewers is, I mean, we know what we see on the internet, and that's about it. So, can you share something?
Yeah. So first of all, it's a very, very fascinating world. The world of the Rajya Sabha, world of Parliament, world of politics, etc. And there are many different approaches one could take. So I chose to be a constructive critic as a member of the opposition. Okay, so and the fact that I had this academic background earned me a lot of respect across political parties. And there was a time when there was a particular bill called the Surrogacy Regulation Act, which I, on the basis of some serious research, critiqued that in a very detailed manner. Then, at the end of the debate, the Parliamentary Affairs Minister came to me and said, we've already passed this bill in the Lok Sabha, but your points are really valid. We're going to set up a committee to fix the bill based on your criticism. Okay, and so basically, since I wasn't seen as a person trying to just score political points, but actually seen as someone who was trying to improve policy, they actually gave me that much respect. So I've been able to do that in that particular context. That's not the case with some other bills where I think my points were equally valid, but they didn't necessarily change what their mind on some of those issues for a variety of other reasons. Anyway, so whenever these sorts of things happen, one feels happy that we've made some difference, right? I mean, as a lawmaker, you made some difference to improving a law. This is another, so basically in Parliament, which is visible with the debates that happen in the Rajya Sabha, the invisible action is what happens in parliamentary committees. okay, where a lot of bills get discussed, various kinds of issues get probed, etc. So there again, I've had a lot of opportunity to contribute ideas and engage in, in debate and things like that. And there again, there's been a certain amount of respect. So all that is good. The constituency that I'm trying to represent, Bengaluru North, has 33 lakh voters. Okay, and people's expectations are very different. It's not just about being a policymaker or a parliamentarian. They also want you to be a people's problem solver, right? This evening, I got a call from someone saying some young woman has not been able to pay off her student loans. Can I help? And I responded saying, boss, I'm a professor. I'm not some, Kubera here. I'm not, investment banker from London. Okay. So basically, uh, try to set expectations. Otherwise, those sorts of, people want help of every kind. And for me, going forward, the social expectations that you will attend weddings, that you will attend funerals. In Bangalore's traffic, Chaudhary knows that you can lose a lot of productive time just in doing these. Anyway, we'll see. Everyone who elects you and supports you in your election has a claim on you, and it's not easy. But we'll have to balance that out with the desire to make a concrete difference in a tangible, intellectual manner. Now,
So
sorry to go off on
that's
this
the
long
biggest
monologue.
challenge on the Lok Sabha and the ground level voting. But from your Rajya Sabha and from your on a lot of these committees, I'm very curious to know, does it happen only party level voting, or do people actually cross that and intellectually say that, oh, you know what, this is the right way to go, I don't care just because my party leader said this?
Okay, so committees are fairly apolitical. Okay, and they're one of the hidden secrets of how Parliament functions. Let me give you one example. When I was in Parliament, you remember the Nirbhaya tragedy. One of the perpetrators got away because he was below 18 years old. So the minister at that time, Maneka Gandhi, wanted to change the age of adulthood, okay, from 18 to 16. And it wouldn't have affected that particular case because the case was already over. But she wanted to prove a point. Now, in the Human Resource Committee that I was part of, which addresses women and child welfare and the Juvenile Justice Act, the committee did a series of consultations with experts, NGOs, police officials, etc., and came to the conclusion that we should stick to the age of 18 for people to be treated as adults. Okay. Now, this committee had a BJP majority, a BJP chairman, but still, came to this view, which was opposed, which was different from the view of the government itself, right? But we did that. So that kind of, sort of non-partisan search for the best policy alternative. That's what committees can deliver. However, we got overruled in Parliament and the bill passed. That's a different matter. Many times you also see partisan elements creeping in, and that's when the politics of the outside world creeps into the world of committees. More recently, there's been a lot of that, unfortunately. Otherwise, it's a good system.
So in the US, I know that my local council member, she actually gets a big budget and she's able to hire a team of people who do research for her, who do outreach to the community for her. So when I send her an email, her team replies to that email. So when you were a member of the Rajya Sabha, did you get a budget? Did you have a team? And say when you talked about doing this surrogacy bill, right? When you did research on it and when you presented it back to the committee, did you have people supporting you? Were you able to hire an IIM graduate to be your research assistant, or how
Okay.
does it work?
So basically, there are two parts to this, right? Does any member of parliament get sufficient support from parliament for these sorts of things, or no, we don't. And at the most, you're able to hire one person to assist. In my case, and 50 other lucky MPs, there's an organization called PRS Legislative Research that provides select MPs with something called a legislative assistant to members of parliament. So I was lucky enough to have a land fellow for the 6 years I was in the Rajya Sabha. But in my particular case, since I headed the research department for the Congress, I had a team of youngsters who worked with me. They were as much working for the party as they were working for me. And in that sense, I had this, even the speech that I gave on the Surrogacy Regulation Act is substantially based on their inputs that I was able to, organize and deliver and things like that. So, so I'm one of the more lucky ones. But then, indirectly, at least for Congress MPs, we would provide a briefing note on anything that came before Parliament. That was our commitment, and we've held on to that. So yeah, so we could use a lot more research support. You actually need a team to handle, people's problems. You need
Yeah.
constituency development teams. You need people to navigate the bureaucracy to get things done. It's you need a massive, a system itself. And so what happens is the wealthier MPs are able to afford something of that sort, just like they're able to afford a good social media team and things like that. So the inequality impact is very much there, even here.
Actually,
So,
Professor, that is something that has been in my mind for a number of years. How much money that social media, because previously elections, before the whatever is it, the EVMs or the voting machines, used to be booth capturing. That's where the money went. Now that was done. Now it is social media. Let's capture the social media. Uh, is there a lot of money in elections, Indian elections still, or is that reducing?
Unfortunately, it's out of control in many parts of India. There is supposed to be, this year, a 95 lakh rupee limit on how much one can spend officially on the election. Okay, 95 lakhs. Remember the number of voters I have? 33 lakhs, right?
That's
It's
it.
about
So
less
three
than
rupees
3
per
lakhs,
voter.
3 rupees a voter. 3
Oh
rupees
my
per
God.
voter. Tell me what marketing
I
campaign
mean,
would help me
even
reach.
even what do you say? A pavua costs like 300 rupees, right?
Anyway, so the basic point is Prime Minister Vajpayee once made a statement that every MP begins his career with a lie because they don't reveal the actual amounts that they spent on the election. Let's see what happens. I don't want to say anything, but just legitimate expenditure, campaign, communicating your message, running a social media campaign, organizing events, distributing pamphlets, everything costs money. And, these unrealistic spending limits have made me conclude that India is not just the world's largest democracy, we're the world's largest hypocrisy. Okay? We need to change that.
And Professor, you have proposed changes to the election funding mechanism, right? With the National Election Fund and so on. Uh, and recently, the electoral bond scheme kind of got scrapped by the Supreme Court. So, the new framework that you have proposed, can you walk us through quickly
Okay.
what
Yeah.
that
Let
would?
me just tell you what the logic is, right? So you would know the concept in economics of something called public goods, right? Public goods are something like national defense. Once it's provided, it's available to everybody, and and nobody's excluded, right? And as a result, nobody wants to voluntarily contribute towards. So what do? We take it out of taxes. Everyone wants national defense, but everyone will free ride. If you ask people to contribute,
Right.
each one will say, "Ask my neighbor; they are better off." Right? So what I'm saying is, a clean polity is also a public good, a clean political system, and but nobody contributes to clean up the system. Okay, and it makes it so much harder for a clean politician to survive. And so, as a result, you end up, you know, with this whole hypocritical structure where expenses are driven underground, those with black money are privileged, you know. And if you want to change that, we need to people to even have some resources available to even clean idealistic politics. For this, I'm proposing something called a national election fund. We can get into the details later about how you would allocate resources to people, but it would be a transparent way of allowing somebody to have enough resources to be competitive. Okay, and you don't need to spend as much as your competition. You just need to spend enough to be seen as a viable candidate. Okay, that's all. And national election fund doesn't cost that much compared to our GDP, one of the fastest growing economies. But the basic point is that if we don't do something like that, I this election I asked people for voluntary contributions. Many people have given me, but we don't have a culture like in the US where people donate significant sums to causes, parties, candidates of their choice. Okay, so we need to figure this out. Unless we figure out electoral funding, we are in deep trouble as a democracy.
So I 100% agree with you. Electoral funding is the biggest corruption mechanism on one side and the biggest democratic point on the other side. Now, the Indian Supreme Court uh, on electoral bonds, which was supposed to be like a step up on transparency, they came down about like a few months ago.
Basically, electoral bonds were an innovation that tried to address the issue of anonymity and protect that. Now, basically, that clashes with the idea of transparency for the right of citizens to know who's being paid for what. And now that the stories are coming out on electoral bonds, it appears that there was also an element of extortion. Some company would be raided by the ED, and then the next day they would contribute electoral bonds, and then the case would magically disappear. This is what we want to avoid, right? It wasn't even a level playing field. It was all tilted in favor of the ruling government. So it's, I think, appropriate that the electoral bond system was thrown out. See, there are no clean processes that are very transparent, that are easy to implement. You would have seen in other parts of the world, as leading politicians go to jail because they've not been able to raise funds genuinely and openly. In India, at this very moment, Mr. Arvind Kejriwal, who came to power on an anti-corruption movement, is in jail, accused of, various
Sharab Ghotala wala
scams
jail,
involving.
right? Sharab Ghotala.
Yeah, something like that. And by the way, one of our IIMB alumni is also in jail on the same issue. Huh? One of my
Oh, who is
colleagues, in
he?
fact, he used to be. Let it be. Okay. He used to be head of the
कौन है
student
वो
government.
is Sisodia IMB? I mean, he was having some malish or something, right?
No, not a politician, a person who's in the liquor business to begin with.
So, Professor Gowda, I want to understand. I want to understand this. I've understood your motivation. I understand the problem of political funding, and you taught a course on political economy. I understand that right now the government says you can spend 95 lakhs, and I understand how you say it makes us the world's biggest democracy and the world's biggest hypocrisy. So, out here in the US, I get invited to at least 3 or 4 lunches or dinners every month because politicians they want $5,500 from me. That's the maximum contribution I can give to a politician. Why don't we have a system like that? And I also understand you told me
Yeah,
that our society doesn't have that culture. But why can't we develop that culture? Isn't that natural?
Yeah, I agree. We need something like that. We need also a culture of contribution. I mean, during this election, when I asked many clean industrialists who succeeded because they have not had to corrupt the system or to contribute, many of them threw up their hands and said, no, 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 we don't get involved in politics. We want to stay clean and above all this. And I told them that, if clean business people don't contribute to clean politicians, You're going to force us to go and ask for funds from people who have an agenda, who will corrupt us. That's the price we pay. If people believe that they're holier than thou, and this sort of. Anyway, one of the things you said, you understood my motivation, etc. I want to give you one example of how one could have impact. So when I was a Rajya Sabha member, I was also on the board of NIMHANS, National Institute of
Yeah,
Mental Health
yeah.
and Neurosciences, and it's an ex officio posting. And while I was there, I basically used to put a lot of pressure on the doctors there, saying that counseling and such methods were available only to urban Indians, and that we needed to reach out to, say, farmers in distress who were taking their own lives and things like that. So I aggressively pushed them to introduce telecounseling. Technology had also been improving while I was there, right? And so Minimans actually started telecounseling. And after a year or two, my term ended in 2020. But about 3, 4 months ago, I called the former director of NIMHANS, who's now the head of the National Medical Commission, to congratulate. And just in passing, I mentioned to him, I said, thank you so much for implementing that program that was dear to my heart. And he said, Professor, our program, that telecounseling in Karnataka, became such a success that the central government decided to adopt this and launch a nationwide program called Telemanas. And he
Wow.
said, this is your contribution, he said.
Yeah,
Okay.
wonderful.
Wow.
So, I mean, look, it's not rocket science, it's not some original innovation or anything like that. We're able to make a difference. And if I've saved as a result, I've saved a life or two somewhere earlier or in the future, it makes my whole political career meaning. Okay.
Wonderful.
So, this sort of thing. And, or if you take, Chaudhary lives near Belandur. Recently when the metro line connectivity was completed, I was in government, I pushed for something called metro feeder buses to run on the outer ring road every 5 minutes in an attempt to move people from private transport to public transport. And that became a success. And now there are metro feeder buses in multiple stations. And again, it's not rocket science. It's called first and last mile connectivity. But someone's got to do it. And we pushed and made it happen. So, in this way, there's a certain amount of satisfaction one gets saying, okay, you've gone out there, done something, made a difference somewhere, and the journey continues.
So you talked about Telemanas being launched nationally after the success in Karnataka. I must tell you, so I run a mental health organization called Peak Mind. When we were recently in Kota and number of other places, we work with students, and Telemanas has been extremely useful to these students. We have ourselves been promoting it everywhere because institutions don't have a credible solution, and uh, yeah, Telemanas being led by Nimans has been filling that gap. So hats off to you. I didn't know the background behind it, and, and it's really
As I
wonderful.
said, that's what he told me. I'm happy to have made a difference somewhere.
So let's get back to election funding, and I come from a perspective of understanding this myself. So this 95 lakhs is given to you by the government. Is that
No,
official
no, no, no,
fund?
no, 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 no. That's how much I'm allowed to spend of my own money. Okay,
Oh, so even that money you have to raise yourself.
of course. See,
And
this
does
is
the
the whole
party?
point. No, party may give also. That is a different matter. The basic thing is that democracy is a complicated exercise.
Yeah,
You need politicians, you need political parties, you need campaigns, all of which cost money. I mean, politicians require money to stay full time in politics.
yeah,
The whole political establishment, all the people who go out and campaign, who are involved in mobilizing, who attend rallies, etc. A lot of them, need to have some income source as well. So it's really a challenge to keep democracy alive and kicking.
yeah. And you don't have to share it if it's supposed to be private, but it would be great. And just from a perspective of learning, Like of this 95 lakhs, how much does the party give you, and how much do you have to raise by reaching out to industrialists and other people in the society?
Yeah, in my case, I had to basically contribute this myself. But as I mentioned, I had many people who contributed. Unfortunately, on the IIM alumni group, apparently they decided when some of my students posted saying we want to raise funds for Professor Gowda, there was a blanket ban on political messaging or something like that. Okay, so that didn't help at all. Okay, and what can I say? So
Yeah, because
politics.
yeah, we have a very active WhatsApp group for IMB graduates from the year 2000, PGP graduates, and I did not know till very recently that you even wanted to raise funds, because if you wanted to, I'm sure some of us would have wanted to contribute.
Actually, there are two things there. One, I still have debts to pay off from my election,
Yeah, yeah,
so funds are still welcome. Second, I can only take from Indian citizens. Okay,
okay.
so that's an interesting aspect that those of you who are abroad need to
I think
think
most
about.
of most of
Okay,
the people in our
that's
WhatsApp
interesting.
group are Indian citizens, including me in London.
An Indian citizen, and you want to give me lots of money, I welcome it. That's all.
Yeah. Uh,
It's all for a good cause. Yeah, I have. Anyway, my years at IMB were amongst the most happy years. I really enjoyed engaging with our bright young minds, you and your successors, and the batches that followed. And the nice thing about all of you is that, you know, merit is what got you into IIM, and that same drive and spirit is something that has taken you on to global heights, to entrepreneurial directions, and each of us in our own way is pursuing a path to making an impact on society, to make a difference. What Chaudhary mentioned about mental health dimensions of education. Yeah, really, really, these are extremely meaningful. You don't have to be in politics. What happens is, in politics and in government, we learn to look at what you do in the private sector and figure out how to scale it up if possible. And that way, many more people will benefit from. Those sorts of possibilities is what government offers. And the nice thing is, again, so many of you have done so well. The whole philanthropy, give back movements that have picked up, many people are making a difference to society as well. So mine has been a path, like a road less traveled. It's been challenging. It's still ongoing. I hope it works out in this election. But I would urge each and every one of you and every listener to also think about how to give back to society. Many, many years ago, when I was a kid, there used to be a sort of a slogan from Swami Vivekananda. It said, "So long as the millions live in poverty and ignorance, I hold every man a traitor who, having been educated at their expense, pays not the least heed to them." This was it. And I mean, very strong words from Swami Vivekananda, basically saying that, those of us who have benefited from government funding, from resources being allocated to us rather than to others, that we have a duty to give back. And if we don't, we are traitors, is what Swami Vivekananda says. And I would urge everyone to think about what that means. It really means that take our IITs and IIMs. These are institutions which are very well endowed and supported by the government, and that comes at a price. Some primary school is not getting the same resource because it's coming to you. So it's not about just us and our merit and our success in the global marketplace. It's also about the resources that went into it, the public resources at IIM Bangalore that helped us, that created the platform and the foundation for us to go out and make a difference. So I would urge everyone to spare some thought, some resource, and give back to society and make an impact. You'll also feel better for it, and certainly society will be better off for it.
Definitely. That's very well said. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you, Professor, for your time. I think once the elections are over and results are out and so on, we'll probably reconnect, reschedule another discussion.
Yeah, just be involved, give back, be part of NGOs, whatever. Okay, civil society, but just make a difference in your own way. Okay, thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for inviting me, guys.
Thank you
Thank you.
so
Thank
much,
you.
and
Thank you.
all the best.
All the
Yeah.
best.
All the best, Professor, for the results that will come soon. Thank you.